as usual, we start with public to be heard. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on something that is not on the agenda? If so, raise your hand in some manner or speak up.
Seeing no hands, Catherine.
Thank you. I didn't see anything on this, what section of screen I have. Okay, so we're gonna start with review and consider the amending the contract for David White for the town plan. And you wanna walk through this, John?
Sure. I believe David is with us, and he can also talk a little bit about his contractual work. So this particular amendment is for the consulting work that David has been doing in support of the Planning Commission in revising the town plan. And Paul and I met with David to go through the past few months of invoices just to make sure that the invoices relative to both the contract with the town, which he's currently engaged to work on character-based zoning updates, is billed independently of the contract with himself as Sterling Mountain and his colleagues at Resilience to again work in support of the town plan. David, do you want to take it from there?
Happy to, John. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We
Awesome.
can. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yes, so I currently have two contracts with the town of Jericho. One is relative to the town plan, which is what this agenda item is specific to. The other one has been to provide assistance on a number of other topics. And the kind of topic at hand is to help the Planning Commission make some amendments to the character-based zoning. Actually, that contract will expire at the end of September, and Susan and I had a conversation earlier this week about extending that probably as late as March. We don't need more money, we just need more time because the town plan is taking most of my time and energy. So that would be something for you to discuss and consider if you were so willing to extend that contract. But this one has more to do with funding rather than with time. Over the course of the last several months, myself and my colleagues at Resilient Planning and Design, we've done a lot of work with the Planning Commission, and we've now produced two drafts, one that is currently going to a Planning Commission public hearing. We are, at least my portion of that project is over budget, and I have no funding left to carry me forward through the end of the year, which is when we would anticipate the town plan to finally be adopted by you all. So it's a request for extension of an amendment to the budget, adding the equivalent of 40 more hours of time, up to, I should say, 40 more hours of time, or $10,200 to keep me on task in assisting the commission and ultimately you when it comes time to adopt a new version of the town plan.
Is there more money needed for resilience as well?
No, there's not. They actually have about $1,000 left in their portion of the contract. And their work is really limited to the kind of the final formatting of a draft and putting it into its final design. So they feel like they're in pretty good position to provide two more, well, probably another draft and then a final document between now and the end of the year.
So if, what is it, $10,000 you just said?
Yeah, $10,200 up. I keep catching myself. Up to, because our contract is really based on time time and expense spent rather than a specific deliverable. So if it takes less time and we can get through it quicker and simpler, then that's a savings directly to you.
Sounds good. Are there any other comments?
Well, I'm just trying to imagine, John knows I've broached this a couple of times over the last couple of days. I'm trying to pigeonhole this expense. So would it be reasonable to say that under professional consultants, we have $25,000 budgeted, and it would be reasonable to think that at the actual for 2024, just as an example, might be $35,000. That's where that cost would be affixed to the budget. I'm just trying to figure out where it's coming out of.
It would come out of the 25, I would think.
It would come out of so it wouldn't be in excess of the 25. It would
No.
come out of the 25. Is that what
It
you're
would-
saying?
Yes, I mean, that's how it would be expensed. It's because there's, we budgeted 25 and that's in the planning commission. And,
Right.
And so there's, I think the select board still has also some money for consultants as well. So basically the planning, so there is money for consultants.
Okay, that helps tremendously, Catherine, because that makes it sound like this expenditure, for the most part, we anticipate. I'm not opposed that if it doesn't go this way, but you're saying we anticipate that out of that 25,000 of that line item, we'll be able to cover this 10.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Where did the last budget that we've used so far come out of?
It would have come out of the professional consultants as well for the planning commission. And
Same line, the previous fiscal year.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Plus and it started with a planning grant of 28,000 to start with. So there was that money to start with, and then we added to it.
I did want to say, and I had an epiphany in front of John when I was at a meeting with him a few hours ago, that one could argue that some of this work David White is doing is within the planning and zoning department. So as we enter this NEMRIC study, if it ever happens,
Yeah.
this is a piece of data that essentially we have outsourced to David what a more robust planning and zoning department might be able to handle in different circumstances in a different town with a little more money or whatever. So
You're right.
it helped me get past, well, we're going over budget in this area. No, it really speaks perhaps to staffing more generally. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's where, the help needs to be, because we've seen that over the last couple of years with the amount of work, because there are zoning issues that have not yet been not able to be tackled because they were busy with other things. And as you said, it's staffing, and that staff could also deal with grants and project management as well.
So Madam Chair, are you looking for a motion?
Yes, I am.
So I make a motion that we approve up to $10,200 for additional work with from Sterling Mountain Community Planning and Design.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank
Now
you
we're-
all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
David.
Thank you,
David.
David.
David, can you hang on for a sec? The next items around the Riverside Village redesignation.
Sure.
Just in case, I think it's pretty cut and dried. Linda submitted a memo outlining process, but just in case the select board has any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for that.
So you want to talk about it, John? Because this is, it is standard because it has come up, this is an 8-year renewal.
Right, so Linda, so David, I believe the process began, or the responsibility for the process was given to David before Linda began in December. Every 8 years, our designated village centers have to be re-permitted or redefined as such. David willingly took on the work to do the background information required to submit that application to the state. All the required application and supporting paperwork was provided on our behalf by David and on Underhill's behalf by Brad Holden, and all has been received. So I don't know that there is, it's really the recommendation, as Linda laid it out, is that the select board make a motion to approve the renewal for village center designation for the Riverside area. And forgive me for not indicating which village center we were discussing before I talked about process.
So John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think this is putting a bow on the renewal application from the town to the state. So the select board is making that formal request for that renewal.
Correct. And again, being that part of the process, I mean, the whole thing is new to me specifically, but yeah, thanks for clarifying that, David.
There was an interesting discussion at the Regional Planning Commission Executive Committee meeting last night, talking about updates, because out of S100, there's multiple studies that are being conducted to deal with housing. And because of one of the authorized studies, there may be changes to these districts in the future. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the legislature next year, but they may, in order to have more infill, there may be more areas that are no longer subject to Act 250 within a density area. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens. But that was just a topic, to add on to it.
Catherine, the other thing to point out for people joining who may not be aware, the other critical importance of the village center designation is for funding purposes. So
absolutely.
it allows us to seek grant funding for all the future development that we're seeking, both infrastructure and housing, commercial benefit in that area.
Plus, people are eligible for historic credits too, as well, if they do things that for it's a private owner who's going to update. I mean, they can apply those kind of grants.
Private owners, yeah. So I make a motion to approve the renewal application for village center designation for Riverside.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
Appreciate you coming.
That program benefits paper that was attached to that was really interesting. I'd never really seen it summarized like that in one page, so that was good.
Yeah, that was nice. It really was, because it's,
Caitlin
often
Blush.
pieces here and there, pieces here and there. But now it's poor Colleen, who has a lot of issues, having to deal with a lot of different things. Who's up? This is considering something, what to do about these, all the basic services that they have to provide now rather than emergency services.
Well, is Colleen going to open some remarks, or do you want us to just start jumping in here?
I think Colleen should go, because there,
Okay.
if anybody hasn't, who may be on MMMC TV or not know what we're talking about based on what we got from
Okay.
Colleen.
That's fair. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you everyone for having me. I recently brought to all of the select boards of the communities the question about whether or not Essex Rescue should begin providing a fee for our non-transport services when we're called to a location for service, and the individual decides they don't want to go to the hospital, we treat them and they refuse transport or decide they don't want to go at that point because we have fixed the problem. Or some of the more nuisance calls that we're getting to being requested for services that really don't, the ambulance shouldn't be called for. And it seems to be happening more regularly and to things that, clipping toenails way out of our scope of practice, cleaning somebody up after they fall because they have refused services from other, state resources and things like that. And it doesn't just affect us financially, it is also burning out the people that we have that provide the service when we're already struggling to find people that want to continue to do that type of work. The state changed our protocols recently, which requires anytime the ambulance is called to a location and we provide any sort of patient assessment or engage with an individual, that we are now required to complete a state non-transport form. And essentially what it is when the ambulance is called to a scene, we are entering someone into the healthcare system. And liability wise, they want to ensure that we are properly exiting somebody from the healthcare system. So we may be, in some circumstances, the last person to see that patient, provide them medical assistance or information, suggestions, advice. They want to make sure that the person clearly has received that appropriately, that we've assessed them appropriately, and they've exited the system. Sometimes these calls are quick, sometimes they are not. We are lucky enough to have first response in much of our areas that we cover. Unfortunately, sometimes these situations get so involved that we still end up on scene to assist. Sometimes we don't, and that's great. But when we do, we're tied up. We're now unavailable to take any other call, which is a problem because we're already 125 calls ahead of last year. So that's definitely putting strain on our system. There are a lot of ambulance services that already charge for this. Essex Rescue has charged for this service for years. The difference that we're talking about and what I'm inquiring your feedback for is we've never held the patient responsible when their insurance doesn't pay. We've always written that amount off. In fact, we write off any remaining balance that insurance companies don't cover in this situation. Anything over $250 goes to collections, but anything under that, which is typically related to our non-transports, we end up writing off. And the last 2 years, and I won't say the last 2 years, the last year and a half to today, that's been a total of $58,000 that we've written off. So the question is, right now, there are some patients that their insurance companies do cover the fee for non-transport and for a basic life support, meaning we check your vital signs, we have discussions about whether or not the emergency room is the best route, what other resources we can connect the individual with. That's $150. If we provide, let's say it's somebody having a diabetic emergency, we start an IV, we provide them medication, some time to get them back to their normal mentation and things, and they decide, nope, I don't want to go to the hospital. They have the right to refuse. That's $250. But we've also, at that point, treated the patient, provided, medical equipment and supplies and things that went to that. So the question is, how does the select board feel about this? And I understand that you're trying to take care of everybody, and everybody's situation is very different. But what doesn't get covered under, for the users is coming back to the taxpayers to pay through these subsidies that you've been paying. When we can't make ends meet because the insurance or payments for the service being provided aren't meeting our budgetary requirements, it's coming back to other taxpayers to pay. So it's You know, if you use service from any other entity, people expect that they have to pay something. When I talk to our billing department, who covers a lot of New England, not just Vermont, and ask them, you know, obviously this is a big change for us. It's going to be a lot of change to residents, and ask them how people generally take this change. And she said most people expect that this is a service they pay for. She said they would much rather pay the $150 or $250 bill than to go to collections. I would have to agree with that personally, but I also know that everybody's financial situation is very different. So this is a big decision that we've come to, and I'm just looking to answer questions and anything that you may have.
What has been the response of other select boards or councils so far?
So Westford was very much in support of this. I didn't actually end up going to one of their meetings. So they were very much in favor of it. Unfortunately, I have not heard from anybody else.
So there were two questions that seemed to be in your what you wrote to us. One was,
Yes.
Should we start billing and referring to collections non-transport services? That was sort of the first question. And then the second question is, barring that, would the select board be willing to pay at least for some of the uncollected funds that we didn't receive for services rendered, right? There were sort of two parts to the end of that.
No, the question more was, so one, does Essex Rescue charge for these non-transports? So right now we do for insurances that will cover the non-transport. If the patient's insurance does not cover the transport, do we send the bill to the patient? If the patient decides not to pay the bill, does Essex Rescue write the bill off, or does Essex Rescue send them to collections? Which essentially would mean we are sending any balance from this point forward to collections.
Wow.
Okay.
So right now, we only send amounts that are more than $250, which is the ALS non-transport rate. That is the only amount that we don't send collections. Anything above that would be a transport bill that somebody isn't paying.
So would it make sense for you to lower the threshold from 250 to something else, or no? I mean, I want to do what's good for you guys, frankly. Whatever you think is going to help your organization, whatever that is.
I think the biggest thing I think about is you've got somebody's insurance that's paying the whole amount, and then you've got we're asking something different. I'd have to ask. I don't know legally if we can do that. Because what's allowable by the government is different than we bill out the same amount. It doesn't matter how it's being paid, but the government dictates how much is reimbursable if it's non-commercial insurance.
Right.
Well, how much? So on the insurances that do pay something, what does that kind of payment average for these non-transport fees?
They pay the whole amount. It's either, you mean for just the ones that are covered?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I have that number. Oh, well, yes, I do. So I know these are just numbers, so it can be hard to like visualize them, but the total amount that was billed out for non-transports, this is just for this current calendar year. So just from January to, I don't even think this, January to August 1st was $31,941. What is actually allowed to be, what the insurance companies, for those that had insurance that would cover, what that would amount to if it was allowed would be $30,347. What has been paid, which would be what's been paid by insurance companies, is $7,000.
That's the most thing. That's the weirdest thing. They allow so much, but yet they only pay a little skinny, but
I know. And so the biggest factor here is a lot of our patient, if you remember back to our initial financial discussion, a significant population of our payers are Medicare and Medicaid. And
Mhm.
Medicare and Medicaid are two of the insurances that do not cover non-transports.
Yeah.
They're also some of the biggest people calling us for these things. My hope, and so I started digging a little bit deeper into some of our data with subscriptions, because one thing that I felt a little bit reassured about making this change was that we offer a subscription plan to our residents. It's $50 for the entire household. It doesn't, some subscription plans will restrict, it doesn't cover non-transports, or it only covers one non-transport and the rest are transports. So if Essex Rescue continues to offer a subscription plan, and it is known to the residents that we charge for this service, my hope is, one, that it would deter people from using the ambulance improperly. It would allow us to better educate them and offer them the subscription plan. And we do offer that subscription plan. So there is an out for people if they're concerned about the financial effect of this. You pay $50 once a year, and it doesn't matter if you go to the hospital or not. We're going to come and we're going to take care of you or offer you the assistance, but it's not going to cost you $150. So when I ran the numbers, given the amount that we got for subscriptions this year, and bear in mind that that also includes donations that come in with the subscription. So not all of them are just the $50 subscriptions. So for the $125,000 roughly that we brought in from subscriptions, I think it's slightly higher than that, but that's a calendar year and this is a budget year I'm talking about. That would have been 2,516 subscriptions. So Essex Rescue has an approximate population coverage of 30,000 people.
Right.
So this year, we had so far for the 2023 subscription year, which is still in progress and they still trickle in, we're at 1,863 subscriptions. We can do better than that. That's my feeling. We can get this information out. Now, I will say it is definitely better than it was years ago, when, we were talking 1,600 subscriptions. So it is going up. But I still think there's a lot of people that are unfamiliar of it. And, I think there's a lot of assumptions as well that your insurance company will cover it.
The
Especially
bottom
when,
line is your question number 3 said, should the patient be responsible for the bill regardless of their insurance carrier's coverage for the service? And
Yes.
what you're looking for from the select boards is yes or no. My feeling is yes. I don't know what the other answer would be. And
Yeah,
if they can't, then I don't know what you do with that. It's collections, but then you're still going to have an outstanding amount that you still don't collect on. So.
Mhm.
yeah, and those that aren't billed, I mean, for odds and ends and like the weird that you're talking about toenail clipping and stuff. And I think a lot of this has happened post-COVID because there used to be a program where they go out and clip, where elderly would come in and have their toenails clipped periodically.
Catherine, you're correct. That actually still does exist, but I don't know that everybody, I think social services could do a little bit better job with letting people know that now that COVID, it's not gone, by the way, but now that we are able to be out a little bit more, those services have picked back up again. But I don't know how well that's known. I mean, we see people who don't go to the doctors. We see people who don't see anybody. So we may be the only people that they see.
Yeah, I could see a small, as you said, for some of these, like $150 or something that's billable, that makes sense because, as you said, people recognize that there's a service here, and then I hate to send it for 150 to collections, but because some people can't afford it.
Right. But could they afford 50?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean,
again, let's not, money these days, $50 is a lot of money.
Right.
I don't want to take that for granted either, but we also offer payment plans. We can work with people. They can submit hardship requests and we consider their finances to their family size. Like, we do all the same things the hospital does. We allow them to pay over time. Like, there are options, but right now a lot of it is just going like, it's ignored.
Catherine, can I interrupt for 1 second? We have kind of a unusual circumstance. Michael Weinberg, who is here for Board of Abatement meeting, is sitting in the room and he's hoping to ask a question. Is that
Sure.
okay?
Yeah, if he's here. And, you
Michael,
know,
why don't you come up here so the camera will just sit right here. Sit over here. Yep, so you can go on the record here.
yeah, he's he was a longtime volunteer.
I think one of the things that's missing about the subscription discussion is that there's a great number of calls, and Colleen probably knows the percent. There's a great number of calls where Essex Rescue is busy on another call and does not respond to Jericho, but Richmond Rescue comes out. The subscription plan is not transferable. And so if Richmond comes and lifts somebody up off the floor and does not transport them to the hospital and chooses to bill, and that person has a subscription with Essex Rescue, it doesn't cover. And one of the things that I would recommend is that Essex Rescue sit down and have a conversation with the other rescue squads that back up Essex Rescue and say, we need to make this so that when you're responding to the Essex Rescue territory, subscription plan is transferable.
That's a
one
great
part.
idea.
And I think the select board members would be more aware of what's some of these intricacies. This is my second comment and question. When last year's increase was made, all of the towns, not just Jericho, all of the towns requested a seat on the board of Essex Rescue. The select board would be aware of these intricacies to a greater degree if there was a regular representative from the town of Jericho going to the Essex Rescue board meetings. And this is my second question. I would like to know the status of representatives from each of the towns being on the board at Essex Rescue.
Yeah, that's one we haven't followed up on, have we?
Would you like me to respond?
Yes, please.
So we are currently in the process of rewriting our bylaws. So the request to bring someone onto the board couldn't immediately be granted because we continue to have issues with quorums and being able to vote, which is one of the reasons why we're trying to change our bylaws. As far as having the select board involved with discussions at a board level and where things are going and what Essex Rescue is up to. All the select boards have been given an opportunity to elect someone from their select board to be part of discussions. We also send our invites to the select boards. They are welcome to any of our meetings. Sadly, we have only had one select board member from the 5 communities attend any of our meetings. And that was immediately following some of the initial discussions way back last budget year with the increase. We didn't even have anybody attend our last budget meeting. So the offer still stands that until any changes can be made with our bylaws, which is our governing rules of the organization, we can't put anybody on the board in this capacity. So we're still working on that and doing our best to meet the requests of our select boards. As far as speaking to the request of honoring our subscriptions with other agencies, we have had these communications with local, St. Michael's Rescue is another one. If they accept our subscription, then they aren't necessarily recouping all the funds that they would. They also have different rules as to whether or not they send people to collections or not, and whether or not they bill for non-transports. I'm certainly willing to bring that up again. I don't know that the answer is going to be any different, but if that is something that the select board would like me to do, I am happy to do that.
Any comments, Eric?
I had a couple, but Michael brought up some really good points. So now I'm now I'm just thinking a little bit more. So yeah, I have a couple. One, overall, I mean, we can make a motion or whatever. I support you billing what you need to bill. I understand it's not comfortable to bill people who are in Medicaid, Medicare types of things, but the taxpayers are funding this, and we need to play by the same rules that everybody else in the medical business are playing by, and we don't have to like them, but I don't think we should be giving people a break on it. There's other ways where they can get that break, right? There's other assistance that they can get. So I'm just saying I fully support the billing for under 250, the billing for, they called an ambulance but refused a transport, which I think what you're getting at is typically you're not allowed to bill for that because you didn't transport, or Medicare won't pay or whatever, because you didn't transport or whatever. So yeah, I support all of those things. And it's not fun. It's not like anyone wants to go and bill people when they're in their worst scenario, but
Can I suggest to you something that is a scenario that I believe will happen?
sure.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, we lost the screen on this.
I'm just trying to reach out to somebody who's supposed to be joining us.
So here's a scenario of somebody falls in their home and needs assistance to get up. Last time they called the ambulance to have assistance to get up, they had to pay $150. So this time they decide they're just gonna lay on the floor and wait until the people, their son, for instance, whose home they live in, is gonna be home in 4 hours. And so they're just gonna lay on the floor and wait for 4 hours, and they're not gonna call for help. I think that's a very real concern. And
So
again, if there was a representative from each of the select boards on the Essex Rescue Board, these discussions would have been held at that level and not at this level. And I don't want to say the select board is not educated, but the nuances of these proposals would be discussed at the Essex Rescue Board, and the representatives would be telling the select board of the discussions. The select board is not aware of the intricacies of some of these discussions.
I'm not sure it's possible to be aware. UVM, I used to work with the UVM billing department. They had a staff of probably 500 people, and we still got confused about all the things. So I hear you. I don't love it, but I think what it might do, especially in the scenario where you're talking about, it might make that subscription service a little more attractive, and that will help dampen some of these cost increases that are coming. So I understand. It sounds like, Michael, you're not for it. I don't love it, but I'm just saying I understand that there's a lot of downsides to it, but I agree that
if I could just express one more thing. So some things have definitely changed since Mike was with our organization. Our board, this was a topic of conversation, but this was also a topic of conversation that the board did not get deeply into. And in that discussion was to take it back to our select boards and have larger discussions, including with members of the residents under these circumstances. So I'm not concerned about whether this is a discussion that should happen here with the select board or in the board meeting. Being fully transparent, I think the more people that have input, the better, in my opinion, because it affects a lot more than just the select board or the Board of Essex Rescue. Speaking about the individual who's on the floor who may wait the next time, protocols have changed. Things are a lot different than they used to be. I'm not saying that people don't fall 3, 4, or 5 times. We're doing our best these days to make sure that people are more educated about the situations that are either making them fall or their medical situations, ensuring that their family's involved with their decisions. But to be fully transparent and honest with you, people have the right to continue to neglect their needs in their home. They do not have to do anything. If somebody fell and we got there and they're still on the floor, they have the right to turn the ambulance away. They can refuse anything today. So self-neglect, the refusal of services, is still something that somebody is able to do. If they choose to make that decision to not call when there are other financial supports out there, that is a decision that the individual has the right to make and is making for themselves. And we're not going to change that regardless.
I also just wanted to briefly go on the record to acknowledge the healthy conversation that you've engaged the town administrators and town managers in the communities that you serve. While it's been difficult for us to have representation at the board meetings, you continue to extend invites, and I think we've been really working in the spirit of more cooperation, more transparency, more shared knowledge and communication. So I just want anyone in attendance to know that, and we'll be continuing to work in that spirit.
I appreciate that.
I think Mike brought up some really interesting points, though, but so it would be interesting to see if there couldn't be a transferable subscription, whether that's a Richmond subscription or St. Mike's or something, because I think that makes it more useful, because we do have, as you said, you might be busy on something and then Richmond comes, or Richmond might be busy with something and you come.
That did used to be something that occurred. I don't know why it changed. I don't know if it's a legal thing with insurances. I am happy to look into that, because I agree. It does make me cringe when I hear that, Richmond has to come in, and we do get those phone calls of somebody who's a subscriber, but they're usually understanding. But with our call volume increasing, that is also something that is becoming more of a challenge to meet everybody's needs. So yes.
Yeah, because you have a lot of senior housing and senior facilities as well.
Yes.
In that area now. So are you looking for a motion, or just, hey, this sounds interesting or good or whatever?
I think I've gotten what I need. It's more, I just wanted to engage in the conversation, see what the general feeling is about it. And, I know one of the meetings that we had where Underhill was part of the conversation, Brad seemed to be very strong about, like, why isn't everybody responsible for paying whether their insurance covers it or not? I haven't heard from him on this topic, but, I think it can swing both ways. And I think the information and the input of the select boards, when you have residents turning to you and saying, did you know? I think it's good for us to all be on the same page and have the same discussion, and to provide the education of what we're dealing with and the financial challenges of this whole situation. It's certainly not a good feeling. It's not a decision we have taken lightly. But it's where a lot of places are going right now, and we're just trying to make it work and remain sustained. So.
Well, certainly a big part of this discussion suggests that there needs to be a whole lot more education of the public.
Agreed.
But again, if you're a little old lady in some house living by yourself and you're desperate because your toenail's bleeding for some reason, you've got to do what you have to do. And you're just going to make that phone call and get somebody to check it out, even though it's not going to be covered. And I mean, these people are in a terrible pickle, some of those folks. So
Yes. I think a benefit, and one that the town, your communities have embraced, is having first response. The Underhill Jericho Fire Department, not all of our fire departments meet 100% of their calls. Underhill Jericho Fire responds to 100% of their EMS calls. 100%. We always have at least one person. And to that benefit, if they get there and go, Essex Rescue, you are not needed, we are canceled, we don't even get there.
yeah,
And
that's
to
great.
that's a savior.
Yeah.
I wish it worked that way every time, but that is a benefit that your residents have, and the distance in that case gives them the opportunity that we don't get there.
When would this begin, this new practice?
I would like to hear from the other towns if I can. I would like to put something in the subscription when it goes out to make residents aware of this, so it's not a surprise. And it seemed like the mailing might be the best opportunity for that, with, advertisements in the Essex Reporter now that that's going to be printed again. So I would think maybe for January 1, when the new subscription comes into play, that would probably be the best scenario for this.
So and there would be mention in your Essex Rescue report that would be printed in for town meetings that this had been tweaked somehow.
I could do that if that is the change. Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think, if you're going to, advertise, your subscriptions and put this in there, I mean, to say, hey, it's 100, we're charging 150 now to do this because, all the reasons. And then you go, but a $50 subscription will go a long way to help you on this.
Colleen, did I hear you say, I just want to ask you one more time, Colleen, did I hear you
Yes.
say that the amount raised through subscriptions and some donations on top of that more than covers the unrefundable expenses that you have related to these relatively minor hygiene procedures?
So the number I gave you was related to the total amount that we received from the subscription this year. If we were to consider the amount that's allowed, so that $30,000, we'd be talking 638 subscriptions would have covered that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But SJ had her hand up. Are you still interested, SJ?
I just wondered if you can donate subscriptions.
You can. It is an agreement that we have between the subscriber and Essex Rescue. What a lot of people do is make a donation. The donation amount of $50 covers a subscription for someone. We will often have people send in, let's send a $200 check and several subscription forms filled out. I'm sure you could find a way to do it. We just want to make sure that it's, this is an agreement between Essex Rescue and the subscriber. I haven't met anybody that has not wanted the subscription in that way. I'm sure there's some way that you could do that for somebody. But that's a great idea.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your information to, inform, to make us more aware of all the issues, to elucidate the problems that are going on right now, all in the healthcare industry.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your support. I really appreciate you listening tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Colleen.
you, Colleen. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And now a real biggie, Update and review and design proposal for VTrans Bridge.
So, yeah, we have, hey, there he is. We have, Rob Young, who is the VTrans project manager, joining us this evening to, solicit feedback on the proposal for, the bridge known as Bridge 15, which is the bridge on Browns Trace Road, between, Governor Peck and the, Highway Department. For anyone out there who's not familiar with bridge numbers in the great town of Jericho. And Rob, without any further ado, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. So I apologize. My house has lost power. I've been hammered with
Oh, no.
thunderstorms since 5 o'clock. It did just come back on, but I couldn't get my computer hooked up. But I had my cell phone on, and I've been I joined the meeting, and you also have like a breakout room, so I'm here. So, but unfortunately, I can't show the plans. But I'll give you a quick update. I have kind of a punch list here to kind of talk about some things that I think the town would be interested in. So what I had sent the town was what we call preliminary plans. So basically all the earthwork is done and designed for the project. And we have gone out to visit property owners, and we have started the right-of-way process. So there is some easements that we'll need from adjacent property owners to design the bridge and get the rights for the bridge project. So that process has started. And then the next phase after preliminary plans is we'll get into the design of the bridge itself. And we anticipate to advertise in the fall of 2024. So really at this point, I was just going to give you a quick update, just a reminder of folks. This bridge will be closed during construction. The intent is to do that during the school break of 2025. And the town has a 50% reduction in your share for doing that. And let's see what else. So I have on my list here, there is an existing utility line that's underground at the site. And that utility has asked to put a conduit on the bridge. And that's fine. It's a non-participating cost to the town. The utility is going to pay for it. But that's something that maybe the town hasn't thought about. But this is a conversation because the utility company is there already. But if the town had other plans or for future conduit, now's the time to add that to the structure. So that's something that some towns have other fiber optics coming in or something like that, and so you may want to consider just adding an empty conduit for future installation. So that's something that you may want to consider. This particular utility company has asked us to do that. So that's something the town can consider. Other than
You're suggesting that we do consider that?
Yeah, it's really up to you. If you want, the utility company, they own, they have, that's what they do. And so they want to have an empty conduit on the bridge, for a future installation for their product. But there could be competitors in the future that may want to, use the crossing. There's no aerial line at the bridge, but there is in the area. So they could, future installations could use, the aerial line. It's really up the town. I've had other towns request, empty conduits because they just not, the bridge is going to be there for.
What's a ballpark for that then? You're just saying running an extra conduit along the bridge. What is that?
It'd probably be pretty minimal. I'd have to get an estimate. I don't have an estimate from the utility company, but I'd be a strong guess that maybe like $5,000-$10,000, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of where Bridge 15 is, I don't know how much utility there is to that, but God knows we've heard so much over the years about when you do this work, make sure you do the blah, blah, blah. And
yeah, exactly.
it's unfortunate that it's Bridge 15, so it's not really, okay, I don't know if we need one there. So
Right.
That's right.
And it's not, it doesn't really preclude you from working with the existing utility to use their conduit either.
And as you said, there are aerial lines in the area, and
Right. Right.
and people may already have pull rights on those lines.
Yeah.
But
So yeah, that was just the one thing that came to mind as
But that's good.
possible interest the town may have. But as far as the bridge itself, the width of the bridge there is pretty wide, and so it won't really look much different. It'll have new bridge rail that meets current design standards. They really aren't making really any changes other than it'll be a new bridge, new materials. It will be quite a bit wider. The existing bridge is 38 feet, and the new bridge will be 55 feet. So it meets all the Agency of Natural Resources standards called bank full width. So it'll have new deep foundations, so it'll be a very resilient structure. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody had any questions.
So there will be a wider entrance to the bridge then too, to make a smooth transition, so that because of the amount of people who were concerned about the pedestrian and bicycling access to the bridge.
Yeah, so right now the bridge is it's a 11-foot wide with 5-foot shoulders, and so that's what the new bridge will be as well.
But we know that the entrance it's not quite that way. So because there was discussion when we first you had the presentation on the bridge, that there would be a wider apron to the bridge from on Brown's Trace to so it wouldn't be just like and then.
Oh, I see, like a transition. Yes. So in addition to the bridge, right? The project I have right here. It's 175 feet long, so there will be 117 feet of roadway work. That's the transition.
Okay.
Speed may increase a little bit with it getting a little bigger, but that's not much we can do about that. I have one other question. I see, Susan has her hand up, but I had a question. Bob, you're an engineer. My question is more biological. I happen to read through last night the wetland evaluation form, and I noted that in the report that we had received as part of this package, it alluded to a couple threatened. I don't know if they're rare threatened. There was a turtle and a snake.
Oh,
I think it was more just a turtle. But it also alluded to a study that was going to be done in 2021 in regards to bats. One bat had been identified in the packet we got, but in fact, in 2021, and Sabina, jump in here if you want to, there were 4 bats that had been identified in that area. And I just wondered what kind of mitigation during construction might we see that we don't disrupt these little creatures that don't have any voice?
Yeah, so the way the state deals with bat habitat is there's time of year restrictions. And so if there are bats in the area, it's really about trees and habitat. Since we're maintaining, the existing road, and we're pretty much leaving that same kind of roadway prism in place. There's really very little impact for this project. But if there are trees to be removed, they will have to be removed. I believe it's before April 1st. So there's kind of we award the contract in the fall, and the contractor would just do that work in the winter, even though the closure wouldn't be until school break. They would mobilize and do the tree work ahead of time. So that's how we kind of deal with the bats.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Susan, your hand's up.
Yeah, I don't, maybe Sabina was going to ask similar questions, but so what is the expected lifespan of the new bridge?
It is designed for a 75-year life.
Okay, so this new bridge will be in place for 75 years. And it sounds like it's going to replicate the same pedestrian condition that we currently have. So we're locking in the same pedestrian condition for another 75 years. So the question is that a fantastic pedestrian condition that meets complete street standards, or that makes any progress? Or is it basically just what it is now?
I believe from the scoping report, the current or the design width, I have to look at that, is less. So based on the volume of road, it was like a 3-foot shoulder. So the current size of the shoulder exceeds design standards. So we didn't reduce it, we kept it the way it was. So we were actually in excess. So 5 feet, I think we normally, for like a state route with a large volume, it would be 11-foot lane with a 4-foot shoulder. So in this case, you're, a foot wider than for a bridge, and then, where that would have much more traffic on it. So you're currently exceeding the shoulder width. And it's a shared use shoulder. So when you say like pedestrian, so this is bicycles, pedestrians, this is everything.
Right. So, because Bridge 15 kind of seems like it's out in the middle of nowhere, except that it's along a major route between Jericho Center and Fitzsimons Road, which takes people to Mobs. And it's also part of a potential route from Nashville Road to Jericho Center. And both of those routes and Browns Trace Road, or Browns Trace, not Browns Trace Road, were highlighted by many comments that we heard as we are working on the town plan. So I just ask, like, when you say the specifications, it's better than the specifications, is that a specification for a complete street that's bike and pedestrian friendly for all users? Or is that a specification for like commuting to get to work as fast as you possibly can?
All users. Yeah. So the shoulder is a shared use.
And is it on both sides of the bridge? Both
Yes.
directions?
Yeah. Yes.
So you think we're going to be really, really happy with it, and people are going to be like, wow, this is really fantastic. It's not going to be, as we improve bike and ped along Browns Trace away from the bridge is not going to become an obstacle, because we have that situation on Lee River Road going to the high school.
Yeah, I would think that if you were to widen the roadway and meet the bridge width, then you would provide more access.
That's right. I think Brown's Trace is the issue at this point, after the width that you're doing the bridge and the apron to the bridge.
Oh, so I just wanted to make sure that it's not going to be standing in the way of improving that connection for bike and ped over the next 75 years.
Yeah. Like I said, 4 feet, like on Route 100 or like other state routes, is a foot less.
Okay, Sabina, does that sound right to you?
Honestly, I'm still not convinced that it's the best it could be. I would love for the team to investigate that a little bit further and really make sure we're getting due diligence on this, because I agree with Susan. I don't know that does a shoulder constitute a portion of like a multi-use, a multimodal pathway, if that's what we ended up creating sometime in the future.
Yeah, I mean, as far as planning from a bridge perspective, I mean, I guess I can't really speak to that, other than that it meets the Vermont state standards for the size. All I can say that is it's wider than the standard. As far as the other sites that we've designed adequate capacity, and I guess it's about riding a bike and having enough space to put a bike on and pedestrians. 5 feet is considered adequate.
So if I'm pushing my baby stroller on that 5-foot shoulder and I'm walking, will I feel safe?
Probably safer than when you're on the road before the bridge and after the bridge.
Right.
Well, but
Exactly.
what Susan and I are saying is that we are really strongly pushing towards improving those conditions over time, and we don't want this to be like Lee River Road, where now we're chasing after that inadequate bridge and having to build a whole new bridge for the pedestrians. If we want to connect that last bit of sidewalk.
Yep.
So we're just trying to be proactive and,
Sure.
and understand
Oh, yeah.
that this bridge is going to outlive us all. And we want our grandkids and great grandkids to be able to be safe while they're,
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
sidewalks are built only 5 feet wide. I mean, a sidewalk, but then you can have a multimodal that's 8 foot or 10 foot. It all depends on where it is in the traffic that's being used.
But so the old Red Mill has a separation, right, between the bridge and the pedestrians?
Yeah, because the bridge was separate.
It was, right. It is no longer, but yeah.
Yeah, the original bridge was separate. I mean, that's essentially the what the issue is with Lee River. It has to be a separate, but the real problem is also the archaeology of the bridge area and with Lee River and Brown's Trace.
Mhm.
Is it possible to put some kind of I'm sorry, I don't know what they're called, but just some kind of a separator, so not a wall or anything like that between the shoulder and the the driving lane, but sort of freestanding, almost like fence, like slats, if you can picture that. I don't know. Do you know what I'm referring to?
How would you do that with a wing plow?
I was going to say that's going to really be a plow issue.
Uh,
I
it always
think,
comes down to the plows.
Yeah.
yeah. I think we could certainly paint something. I mean, you see a lot of the painted bikeways as you drive to Burlington and stuff. I mean, it's all painted so that it lets you know that is a pathway that's supposed to be safe.
Ideally, you'd have maybe a cantilevered lane on the outside of the bridge that could support pedestrian and bicycle traffic, but then you're going to add to the costs exponentially. And again, just a couple months ago, we've heard regularly from people about the speed of that turn right by the top of Nashville Road and Brown's Trace, which is sort of at the top of this bridge in a way. And when I hear about the width of this bridge, it just means that people are going to go flying over that bridge faster than if they perceive it to be wider, they're going to feel like they can go faster. So
then what
really
other traffic
hard.
calming measures can we put in
It's
place?
painting. I mean, it's the fog lines that are moved in, and it's the painting of the sides. I mean,
It's those fog lines, yeah.
It just really makes people slow down. That is one of the number one traffic calming things.
Well, and we just learned that the VTrans no longer paints fog lines as a matter of their normal road painting, unless I'm mistaken on that, but that's the information that I was given. And so if we're relying on fog lines as our main safety tool, and they're not even provided as a matter of regular maintenance course, then that really leaves us in a not too good place.
That means we have to do turns out that there are companies that we contract with now for painting the fog lines. And we need to start putting that into the budget more regularly.
Because the state never painted fog lines on the town roads anyway.
No, I don't think so.
I guess the question is that it sounds like this project is in the phase of design. And it's an opportunity not necessarily to design to the minimum or the standard, because we also know that VTrans standards are being revised and improved for better bike pedestrian safety over time. But is there a way that we can design it to a higher standard, a higher performance standard that we know our residents want, and we know we're going to work toward delivering on the other parts of Brown's Trace?
I'm with Wayne that I think the wider you go, the more speed people are going to go through that area. And you also have to remember there is a significant cost to not only VTrans, but the community, because our portion still is a fairly substantial chunk of change. And the more you go, we're already pushing the right of way that the town owns, that you're going to end up having to purchase more property from other residents who may or may not wish to do so. I mean, that's also the reason that we have a sidewalk issue on Lee River. Is the other end of Lee River is because of having so much trying to deal with right-of-way issues and going beyond that, and whether people are interested in participating or not. I mean, I get what you want to do. I mean, it is, but when you think about changing Brown's Trace and the extent that of land that it covers, the taxpayers are going to have to talk about that. I mean, because that's substantial.
I think I mean, it depends. I think it might be worthwhile to know what the improved, or I wouldn't say improved design, because Rob has told us that it meets a standard and it should be considered safe for lots of users. But if there's like
he also said it exceeded the standards by, it exceeded the standards is what he said. Of the size we have exceeds the standards.
But if there's an upgrade potential, to know what that upgrade would look like and what that would cost, so that we're not presuming that there wouldn't be support from the taxpayers when we don't know what it might be, or we don't know what it would cost. Because as we're going to talk about the town plan in just a minute, the appetite for the residents, for the town to invest in the future seems there. Of course, nobody's writing a check. And so it's really easy to say, we want this, we want that, until somebody does the math and says, well, therefore your property tax bill is going to be X instead of Y. But residents seem to be wanting to be able to make those investments and wanting to make those choices. So I guess I would just caution you to just assume that it's good enough. Like maybe it is good enough, and maybe we just need reassurance that it is. And Sabina and I can do more homework on the 5-foot shoulder and so forth. But
because that's 5 feet on both sides. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And some separation and some entrance to the bridge that would calm the traffic, like, hey, you got to slow down. If that's, people use lighting, people use planters. There's more than just painting the road. People, you guys have implemented speed bumps. I guess we're here literally banging on the table, begging you to really drive the engineers to deliver an exceptional solution that would be a linchpin to bring Brown's Trace into a functional level that it needs to be in 75 years. And this is not going to be something that we're going to regret.
Because right now the bridge is going to be larger than the road.
Right. So there's constraints.
Because you have the road constraints itself. So it will be, I think, if at all possible, what would help people visualize this is if we could get some kind of, 3D visualization of what the bridge is going to look like. Obviously that has a cost to it, but I think that would help with this discussion.
Well, there was in the specs, there's that crossed view of, the roadbed and then the sides but
Yeah.
if you're going to have a bike lane that is on the same grade as the road, you can put as much paint on it as you want. It's still not going to be truly separate. And so if we're now talking about something that's at a slightly different elevation, even a path or a sidewalk, then that's a whole different kind of bridge, I think, than we're talking about. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the pictures are there, and but, you know, based on their discussion, I think, you know, almost a larger visualization of what the bridge would look like would be helpful, because, you know, we're looking at, you know, things like that, you know, with the lines, and, okay, this is the signs, and this is going to be the sign here, and there's a lot of signage for, you know, bridge and, you know, safety issues and things like that. So there's a lot of signage going to be put on that bridge too. So
I could attempt to screen share, but I'm not as familiar with, the document is giant.
yeah,
To
it
get
is.
where the designs are, and it would be easier if Rob could, but you're unable to, correct?
Yeah, that's okay. I think you guys are heard our request and our concern, and I think we could do some homework on it too.
Yep.
Are the
People-
materials online on the website that we can look at them, the design?
Yes, I sent a link, so I mean, I guess if the town wants to post that link for folks on their own website, that's
Yeah,
fine.
I can work with Sabina on that, Susan.
Okay. And Rob, just so you know, Sabina and I are from the Planning Commission. That's why
Full disclosure.
we're chiming in here so adamantly.
Are there any other questions for Rob while he's here? Because this is not an action item, it's just a review in the proposal. So he's heard, you know, what the town would, you know, is interested in having for the future. So are there any other questions by anybody else?
I guess my only question, Catherine, is next steps from your perspective, Rob. So the extent to which you can integrate the feedback that you've received tonight, yeah, where do we go from here?
Yeah,
After
really, we'll proceed with I guess if the town doesn't have any objections with the proposal, we'll proceed with final plans and continue on with design of the structure. We really don't need any input at this point. I would like to remind you one thing that also came up. I just remembered is that as a part of Act 153, with the share being reduced, the town is responsible for signing the detour for the project.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure that you recall that, and that there's plenty of time. But when we get closer to construction, just to make sure that you have a plan for traffic. We will have a public outreach coordinator assigned to the project, so they will reach out to the town, develop the stakeholder list, regional planning and other towns, and emergency services especially. So they're really helpful in getting the word out about the project so people are aware.
Yeah, and whatever you can do to assuage the planning commission, that we're doing the best we can do possibly for this bridge.
Okay.
Well, the structure of the bridge is the structure of the bridge. When we can put, you know, we get back to that lipstick on a pig analogy, we can put different kind of painting around, but the actual physical structure cannot change at this point, or where we are right now. If there is going to be some kind of designated protected bike path, that's a redesign that's substantive enough that we're not prepared to go there right now. I mean, I hear what SJ and Sabina and, well, not SJ, but Sabina and, are talking about, but I don't want Rob to leave with the impression, oh, they want to have some bike thing. So I don't see that we did not give him that explicit idea to go ahead and pursue that. I mean, the concern's been raised, and God knows it's a dangerous intersection to ride a bike over, no less a baby carriage. But I'm not sure that
it's a dip there and then up.
yeah, I'm not sure we're in a position to tweak it really successfully at this point. But thank you, Rob, for coming by and giving us an update.
Okay, yeah, we'll proceed,
Rob.
and I'll be in touch if I need anything. And you guys can feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, have a good night.
You
Thank
too.
you,
Thank
Rob.
you, thank you.
Appreciate
Hope you
you
get your
coming.
power back.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think part of that packet did have the proposed detour that would be required when we finally got to it. And
Right.
I vaguely remember that being one of the diagrams. So it's not as if we have to make a plan. There is a plan in this packet. We just need to implement what that plan
Yeah.
was, if I recall.
And put enough signage out so people understand that the road was going to be closed for X number of days. It's a month and a half or something like that, as well as, and this is the detour.
Right.
And Sabina has her hand up.
Oh,
Uh,
go
If I could
ahead,
just
Sabina.
quickly and just respectfully point out that I was at that original meeting, which from what I'm hearing from Wayne was in 2021, I guess. It was a while
Right.
back. And
Yeah.
at that time, I mean,
2022, actually.
the planning commission reached out to you with a very detailed request. And so it's not
did-
like we're bringing this up for the first time.
No,
And I
we
just
actually
want to
put
point
that
out that
on-
that's like a bit of a disappointment to me personally, because it means that we maybe could have done better in the 2 years that we've had. So I don't want to belabor it. I understand, what we're thinking, but it's been 2 years. And if they're coming to us as if they haven't heard this before, that means that we, the town, did not make it clear to them that we have higher expectations. So I'm just hoping we can do better in the future. So that's all I want to say.
Actually, there was meetings in 21, and there was another design discussion in 2022. And we did, when we did the form we had to fill out for VTrans, the select board, we did put the exactly what the planning commission asked for in the application. And it seems they tried to do the best they could given the constraints of the wetlands and the property and the right of way, because you do have large shoulders. You have at least 1 foot wider than the new standards. These are fairly new standards, and we meet ANR. ANR standards are tougher because of they want to protect the critters and the frogs and the toads and stuff like that. So I mean, I don't know what else to say, because what you're doing is widening Brown's Trace, getting into the bridge, which is much wider now. It'll seem much wider than Brown's Trace, and it's the road that's the constriction, not the bridge.
You're muted, Susan.
Yeah.
Sorry, which kind of makes you think that the design of the bridge structure itself, when you're entering the bridge from either direction, physically, architecturally, could potentially give visual cues to drivers. Like, sometimes a bridge will have a slightly extended post to mark the entrance of the bridge from either direction. There are treatments around gateway treatments, and it's not a gateway per se. You're not entering into a village center, but I think there are things you could do visually with the structure itself that's not a separated lane, but that's not just looking like this, gigantic swath of a bridge.
Right.
Right. It could also function as traffic calming, Susan,
Right.
to your point.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. Maybe there should be a slight turn before you get to the bridge. It's like, we don't know. We're not the engineers. They're the engineers. They deal with traffic calming all the time. Yeah. There are thousands of innovations that people use all over the country to indicate to drivers that they're sharing the road and that they need to slow down.
Exactly. I mean, those are
saying maybe 5 feet is enough, but maybe the bridge should be pink. Maybe, I don't know. We have to start putting ourselves to a higher standard. Let's find the best thing somewhere in the country and make our bridge look like that.
I do agree. There are a lot of interesting signs and stuff out there that will indicate those kinds of things, and that's doable. I mean, those things are much more doable than adding another couple feet to the bridge.
So as they're about to embark on the design, can the select board give them that directive that we would like the structure to indicate in some way that it's a shared area and that it needs to be safe and that it needs to be slow?
Sure, we could certainly say that. I mean, because they did show an assortment of signage that definitely has to go on the bridge anyway, all kinds of interesting signs. But so
I think those things could be done without adding substantial cost. So yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there we go. All righty, Susan might as well just keep on talking.
No,
It's
blah, blah, blah. Okay.
it's time for the update on the town plan.
Yes, so I just wanted to give you a brief heads up about the town plan, and I want to talk about three quick things. The planning commission, the actual plan, and then the process. And so the first thing I want to say about the planning commission is that Jericho as a town is really, really fortunate to have this planning commission. I am really inspired by everybody on the commission. We have 100% engagement. People are very hands-on. The consultants actually commented that we're much more hands-on and involved than any other planning commission that they've worked with. And I don't really think they meant it as a compliment, but I completely took it as a compliment. So just so you know that there's really good work and really good deliberation and really thoughtful conversations happening by the planning commission. The second thing is just to give you a preview of the plan. So what you see on the screen, thank you to whoever is displaying it, are the town plan. We worked with David White, and the plan is organized around these 5 basic major goals. And within each of these goals, there are additional objectives and priorities and action plans. And this has been around at the forum that I know you've participated in, and it's been in Front Porch Forum, but I just wanted to make sure that you were really up to speed on how it was sitting right now. So these 5 major goals are listed here: to steward a resilient community, to create housing choices for all, to grow a vibrant community, to build a connected community, which is what we were just talking about, or one of the things, and supporting an effective community. And each of those things means something pretty specific. So we identified that climate change and housing scarcity are 2 major issues facing Jericho that we need to address over the next 5 to 10 years. Problems change over time, and that the plan is organized around addressing those 2 specific things. So the first one around resilience is basically natural resources and conserving working lands. Housing choices is where we expect to be driving changes in the zoning regulations and also in investments in infrastructure in the village centers to create more housing opportunity. Growing a vibrant community, we were just talking about with Essex Rescue, and growing a vibrant community is really about all different socioeconomic residents, kids, families, seniors. So I just made a note that potentially the town plan could make a recommendation to appoint like a coordinator or an advocate for seniors who are living in our community in a more formal role, who could promote things like the ambulance subscription and lots of other things. So growing a vibrant community also deals with economic development and growing local businesses. That's really the village center strategy, which has been Jericho's center the village center strategy has been Jericho's objective for a long time. But the town plan is really saying, like, let's put our money where our mouth is and let's make things happen so that our village centers become real vibrant hubs of the community, even more so than they are now. Connected community is kind of like infrastructure, backbone, pedestrian, multimodal, transit. And then building an effective community is really around government and partner organizations like UJFD, Essex Rescue, health and safety, and kind of like the day-to-day grind of getting things done in the community. So that's the basic outline of the plan. It's in 2 volumes. Volume 1 is kind of summary level. It's about 80 pages. We're trying to get it down to about 50. And then volume 2 is really, really detailed, that has all the data and lots of maps and lots of statistics to back stuff up. The last 2 chapters of the first volume are the future land use plan and getting it done. The future land use plan is a map that talks about kind of a broad outline of how zoning might evolve over the next 5 to 20 years as the village centers expand and or housing needs more spaces in other parts of town, or there's a new road, or there's a new neighborhood, or there's a new network. And so the future land use plan describes, it's mostly driven by housing and climate change again, how to provide more housing opportunities of more types of housing, and yet how to maintain our natural resources so that we're not just all driving everywhere from every corner of the town. Getting it done is the list of all the work we have to do and assigns a responsible party. The current town plan has a lot of shared responsibilities, and the Planning Commission decided that we're going to propose a lead on each action so that there's true accountability. Sure, you're going to collaborate with lots of other groups, but ultimately the PC is responsible, or the Trails Committee is responsible. I wanted to call your attention, especially if you haven't looked at the town plan yet, the draft, which has been online now for a little while. I think as select board members, you will be fascinated to read the appendix, which is called the Public Engagement Report, which includes hundreds of comments from people about each of these topics, and basically was the source material to convince the Planning Commission, or to persuade the Planning Commission that the recommendations in the town plan have wide support from at least the majority of the people who participated in the process. True, it's not all the people in the town, it's not a majority of the town. You can only do what you can do with participation, but like I said, around the bridge, I think the reason I feel kind of hot-headed about it is because you'll read those comments and you'll be back to Rob saying we got to be able to do better, potentially. We have to be able to do better all around the town to create connections. People want to walk, they want to go to a cafe, they want to drop their kid off at childcare. They don't want to be driving the triangle 3 times a day when they have kids in the schools. And it's really loud and clear. So, it's also uncensored, and it's anonymous. And you'll really see the theme. Sure, there's some areas of disagreement, but if you don't read anything else of the town plan until you receive it soon, read that. It's really quite interesting. I think you'll be surprised. I think I was surprised starting this process, having been involved with the Planning Commission for a while, that I think 10, 15 years ago, people were pretty happy with the status quo. And I think what you'll find in the comments and in the new town plan is that people are hungry for change. They want things to grow. There's more of an appetite for development, certain kinds of development, not all kinds of development, but they want things to get better. They want things to improve. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about was the process. So if you could just scroll up to show the dates. Scroll down to show the dates. Thank you. So on the 7th, there'll be an article in the Mountain Gazette about the progress we've made so far. On the 19th, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing, and then we will revise the draft based on that input. And actually, we are actively receiving input mostly from town committees during August and September, and that will be reflected in an update. So what you see right now on the website for the town plan draft will change, so that what we deliver to you on October 3rd is going to be version 3. The content is not really changing, the principles is not really changing, but we continue to try to streamline the document and make it easier to use and easier to read and eliminate redundancy and be more clear about certain points. So the content is not really changing, but the format will probably change quite a bit between what you see right now and what you will receive on October 5th. So we vote on October 3rd to forward to you the draft, and then you receive it on the 5th. And right now, John and Linda have huddled and have penciled in 2 public hearings for you, the select board, to hold on the 16th of November before Thanksgiving, and then on December 7th. And with the intention that at your meeting on the 21st, the plan would be adopted. I really need everyone to be seriously committed to the schedule. The plan expires on January 4th. The notice requirements for the hearings are very strict. We really have very little slack in the schedule. The Planning Commission decided to meet an additional extra meeting in September. So we're actually meeting also on September 26th to continue to work on the plan. So if you have any inkling that you're not going to have a quorum, or you might need more time, you might need to consider a special meeting so that we meet the dates, because your meeting on the 21st is, I think, the last select board meeting before the plan expires. And I really do not want to see the plan expires. And I think the plan is pretty great. And hopefully I know you've all participated, and I'm sure you're well aware of what the content is. And so I'm not really expecting any 11th hour, out of the woodwork. We've tried to make the public aware. We're going to really go full court press on that over the next month. So my main goal today was just to really give you a heads up that the plan is really taking shape, and that these dates are really pretty strict. Sabina, please chime in.
I just wanted to add a quick comment, which was put forward as an alternate scenario by Linda Blash yesterday, which was a flip side to this in a positive way being on December 7th, if the public hearing is complete and there is no additional conversation needed, the select board could consider adopting the plan on the 7th and not need to bring it to the 21st. So that's another scenario that Linda brought up as a possibility, if it goes that way. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yep.
Sooner is okay.
Yes, sooner's good. It's a heavy lift. It's a huge project. We've been working on it for a year. David's been instrumental. He's done about 80% of the writing and the research, and now we're kind of coming in at the last 20% to make it really our plan, not a consultant's plan that he's created and delivered to us. I've emphasized to the Planning Commission members that we need to take full ownership of the plan, and ultimately on October 3rd, we will be transitioning that ownership to you, because it's the select board that has to adopt the plan. So I want you to love the plan as much as I'm going to love the plan by October 3rd. And I invite you to be as challenging and as critical and as honest with me as you can be between, now and October 3rd. Like, don't wait, because I'd really like to see it sail smoothly through without kind of 11th hour editing. The design tool that David's team is using is a very nice graphic design tool, and it's universally accessible. It works on all platforms. It works for all users. Be a little bit of a nightmare to have to kind of change it at the 11th hour. So there's no time like the present. And I know everybody's super busy, but if you could just take some time to look at that public engagement report #1 and then volume 1, and deliver us feedback in advance of October 3rd, because we can incorporate your comments just like everybody else's comments that we've heard from SJ's team, and we're going to receive comments this week from the diversity group. We've already received comments from most of the other committees. We invited each committee to come and present to the Planning Commission what their feedback was on the plan. So we sort of forced the issue. We're like, here's your slot. You got to let us know what you think about this plan. Not really speak now or forever hold your peace, but we have really been holding people's feet to the fire. So that's where we are, and I'm really, really excited about it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Susan, for your presentation. You will probably get some other comments because your plan, the Jericho Town Plan, is going to be discussed at the next Planning Advisory Committee of the Regional Planning Commission.
Right, yep. So we have the CCRPC hearing on the 13th, and then our public hearing, and then the PC continuing to edit. So hopefully, I think we expect that we'll have the CCRPC edits included by the October 3rd draft that we send to you.
Susan, as you are aware, I had a chance to look at least a portion of this and send some comments, nominal as some of them were. What rewrites of the town plan do you anticipate would have the biggest effect in changes in zoning regs that might come afterward? I mean, does the picture that's painted sort of lead toward some major revision of some portion of the zoning regs, would you anticipate?
Yes. So there is a high-level list of areas of zoning that the town plan is directing us basically to work on. Simplifying the Riverside character-based zone, which we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, that we've contracted David to help us with, will be the very first thing that we do. The reason that's important is because it's a designated village center. It has the greatest development potential in the near term. We have a single property owner who is actively working on a plan to develop it. We have a village wastewater plan that will be coming in as well. That's another thing that has to be kind of added in the next couple of weeks. And we know that the character-based zone, the regulations are a little bit too complicated and need some tweaking to work in Jericho. So that'll be #1. We're looking at kind of a package of housing friendly, for lack of a better word, where the state produced the Zoning for Better Neighborhoods guide, and we want to incorporate those things to make it easier to build housing in Jericho, especially smaller housing, senior housing, clustered housing, cottage courts. Some of those housing types are not defined in our regulations, so a housing friendly package. PUD, planned unit development, is a section that the PC updated about 2 years ago, and we know there's some shortcomings there, but we think PUD can be a tool to help us achieve clustered housing even in rural areas that would increase housing without our current pattern, which is very sprawl oriented. And then the last thing is, which is probably the most dramatic, would be to really take a hard look at density and lot sizes and ask ourselves, what do the lot sizes and density limits accomplish? What are they supposed to accomplish? And how could we be using them better? And for that, I kind of think we might really look outside the box and not just keep doing stuff the way that we've been doing it. That's a little bit further down the road. I think lot sizes will probably be reduced in the short term, but really thinking of an alternative or a complement to density, I'm really intrigued by that idea. So those would be the primary zoning changes. The primary town changes, I think you're all aware, is real support for investment in infrastructure, particularly in the village centers for wastewater, stormwater, water, and a real frustration and impatience with the lack of bike ped facilities. Every time somebody, sees a road paved and it doesn't get improved, they get kind of, we hear that frustration. So I would say so zoning that requires new neighborhoods to be better connected, open space to be available for trails for the public, to provide better connectivity. Those are, I think it could be a transformative plan that 8 years from now, Jericho could be significantly more functional and healthier place to live, and a more connected place to live, and a more vibrant place to live, so that you can stay here and work here and go out to dinner here, and reverse the decline of the school population. So it's data driven. I think that the Planning Commission and David and all the committees have done a really good job of saying, like, let's not start over, but let's not be so constrained by how hard things are or how expensive things are. That shouldn't be the limiting factor.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will throw in a plug, though, when you're talking about zoning, that you do something about energy efficiencies, because one, that'll also make the homes more affordable in terms of operational costs. And two, when committees are asked to review things, developments for the DRB, the Energy Committee can only say we recommend, because there is no strong zoning to support saying we want to have, the stretch code or whatever the top, whatever the state's top code is currently. So I'm throwing that in for zoning as well.
Yes, we actually had somebody come to one of our discussions who informed us that both Burlington and South Burlington adopted ordinances. So I think it's outside their zoning, but ordinances that prohibit any construction of new buildings that use fossil fuels.
Right, they have.
So in Jericho, the extension of the gas line on Packard Road in order to service the range, not exactly a step forward.
Nope. That was always been an issue, even when the first iteration of the enhanced plan was created by the RPC for the RPC, is that Chittenden County was going to be struggling because of the amount of natural gas and the gas lines that run through there.
Right. So that's kind of a conflict, but it's not utopia. We're not living in Barbie land. So there are some things that
I like that movie.
Yeah. There are some things that, they are what they are. And the good news is that gas line could potentially provide backbone for more housing in that area, especially walkable to the high school. The bad news is that you would be creating more homes now dependent on natural gas. So are you suggesting, Catherine, that you would want to see zoning that would require the recommendations of the Energy Task Force to be a condition of approval, or are you more saying you want the zoning just to require a certain level of energy efficiency, period, end of story?
I think right now, the best we can ask for, you know, and I may be, you know, minimizing what we really do want, but we at least need the latter sent that you said, that, you know,
Okay.
because, you know, you've had an enhanced energy plan from the task force for a few years, and we you know, there hasn't been any movement to get anything, you know, even say, you know, use the building should be built to the stretch code or things like that.
Yeah,
So-
right now it's a density bonus, but I'm not aware that it's really, I think it's been used minimally
Right.
in the applications that I'm aware of.
So it really should be a requirement for at least the minimum new construction. And the state is revising its RBs, the residential building energy standards, as well as the CBs, the commercial energy standards.
Mhm.
And you know, the state is really moving towards, you know, pushing as much energy efficiency as they can, because given the the climate bill, they have to meet targets or they get taken to court. So,
Okay, any other comments or questions?
so that was my
You
soapbox.
guys are
Sorry.
you're all gonna read the public engagement report, right?
I am going to read
Yeah.
that. You said that the other day. This is the second reminder, so I'm going to read that one section on top of the other stuff I've read before. I'll just say one more time publicly, I really like the tasks for the select board. I like the notion of narrowing the scope. You know, in project planning, you have an owner of a task, and the way that this new setup, this new town plan reads, it's much more specific of this group's doing this and this group's doing this. It's not like at some point this amorphous bunch of people are going to get together and decide on a goal.
Right.
So I think that's a step in the right direction, Sue.
I think so too. You know, and then minimizing the amount of verbiage is also significant, because that was always a detriment to the other plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still hacking it, so it hopefully will still get shorter without losing the important stuff.
Yeah, because you really worked hard. I mean, this has been the most public engagement for any town plan. I mean, so that's kudos to everyone who's done all that, because it really has.
That's the
done a
real
lot.
driver. That was the real driver in David's contract needing to be increased with, that we talked about at the beginning, is his original proposal was for one public meeting and we had 6 plus a quorum. We had 7. So they were responsive and we broke it up into chunks and we had good participation.
Excellent. Yeah, the best.
So thank you for supporting the increase in his contract. That's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Ah.
Susan.
Thanks, Susan.
Good night. Good night. Have a good rest of the evening. And now we have Capacity by S.J. Doobie.
Who is that?
Yeah, I know.
S.J. Doobie. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm not entirely, I think I just wanted to be able to have a conversation with the 3 of you and in a public forum to talk about government capacity and growing government capacity. I should start off by saying that I'm here as me and not as a committee chair. Although government capacity comes up in discussion pretty regularly in the Affordable Housing Committee and in lots of the different public meetings, as well as your meetings. And especially as we've been working and looking at the town plan and engaging with the Planning Commission to offer feedback, expanding government capacity is one of the things that's really kind of a theme throughout as a means of accomplishing some of the really progressive and visionary ideas that are in that town plan. And so I think these conversations have been going on since I started engaging in public committees, which has only been a couple of years now. And they've been kind of one-off conversations in a parking lot or coming up in meetings. And folks have a lot of questions, don't have a lot of answers, feel like there might be a need, but isn't quite sure the best way to go about it. We know that other towns like Richmond and Heinsberg and Randolph and towns that are similar size have both a town manager and a 5-member select board. And, you know, our staffing has been pretty flat for as long as, at least as long as I've looked. And we're growing and our projects are growing and our community is growing. And so as we go into this conversation, I guess I've got 2 concerns, both as a resident, but also as a committee chair who's really invested in seeing some of these projects, especially around housing, come to fruition. One of them being that if an increase needs to happen, where and how is the best way to do that increase that makes sense for Jericho and that is going to help us achieve those goals and achieve this new town plan that Susan is delivering and we'll all be talking about for the next couple of months. And the second concern is if we identify the way to go about that, how do we make sure that the community is informed and engaged? And if this is something that is going to come to a vote, that they have the information and the answers to their questions that they need to be able to vote on that. Because the one-off conversations, and me as someone who I think is relatively informed, I still am not sure on the best approach or what it will look like and how we get there and timeline and this, that, and the other thing. And so I think there's 2 ways that I've been thinking about those concerns. And may I share my screen? Is that okay?
Sure.
Even though I didn't, I promise it's not anything.
It's not a 44 slide PowerPoint.
It's not a 44 slide PowerPoint. It is a PowerPoint though, Wayne, because that's my bread and butter. That and Excel. So there's 2 things. One, the kind of informed decision and making sure that we're making a decision that makes sense for our town and for our goals. And I think that you all probably know much more about this than I do, and maybe are even considering moving forward on doing a government structure audit that would take into account and kind of answer some of these questions about, you know, what the town's mission is, what this new town plan looks like and is going to require, what our current capacity is, the best way to increase that capacity to meet those goals. And, you know, kind of do the data collection on that front. And so I think that that's a really important step. But the second concern, I think, should be happening in tandem at the same time. And there are a lot of other questions that I think an audit probably won't be able to assess, and I don't think includes the public engagement component like David White and the town plans group contained. And so some of the questions that I'd like answers to are kind of, I know that there have been conversations that Jericho has had in the past about expanding either to a 5-member select board or doing it to a town manager. And why did we end up where we ended up then? And are things really different now? There have been towns comparable to Jericho that have recently made the switch from 3-member to 5-member, and can we look at their decision making and maybe even talk to some of the folks, committee members who maybe would be willing to talk anonymously about how that's been going and give us some feedback about the pros and cons and how that's improved or complicated things for them. The big thing that I'd really like to do, and I think, as you know, I put out some feelers about the possibility of organizing a public forum to both inform the public, but then also provide a setting where questions can get answered, and hopefully finding some outside expert resident who can answer these questions instead of anecdotes or emotional reactions, which are helpful, but in the context of information and facts and understanding, procedure. I think that would be really helpful and important. And then also collecting and synthesizing and then reporting out both the concerns that the public have, and also that our committee and staff members may have about maybe what these changes could mean for the town. And finally, and I'm sure the audit would help, would do this as well, but outlining the kind of logistics and procedures and what next steps would look like for each of those potential expansions, whether that's 5-member select board, town manager, other staff positions, contracting for certain expertise, whatever those things are. What are the timeline? What needs to, get signatures to go on a ballot to be voted on for town meeting, and what are the deadlines? Just the kind of nuts and bolts about what that's going to take. And I think that part of both the audit, the nice thing about the audit is that it's a 3-month process. And I think that having in parallel a community engagement process that's on a similar timeline, that's either linked to having a green light or a red light for the 2024 town meeting, or 2025 now that we're into September. I don't know. But having it tied to a town meeting deadline, and making sure that I think there are concerns that we do an audit or we put a group together and then that just kind of sits on a shelf and we don't do anything with it. And so making sure that there's a timeline and a deadline associated with these and some real deliverables and a timeline for those deliverables, I think is important, and also important for community engagement, because if I'm gonna take the time away from my busy life to learn about something and invest in something, I want to know that there's going to be a decision at the end of the day within a couple of months of my engagement. And so I don't know where you all kind of sit on this, and what kind of actions, if any, you all are taking on this question, on these questions. But I think I wanted to bring it up.
Well, select boards have talked about this. What? Oh, it must be funky. But anyway, select board. That's weird. It's a kind of funny. There's a funny vibration that's showing up. I don't know why.
It's gone.
Oh, good. Thank goodness. No, different select boards have talked about this over the years in terms of staffing, which is why we, I've been pushing for public works for a long time, which is why we finally got an engineer that is under a consulting contract to be used periodically, because you're right, there are more and more issues that you really need something, and we really need to have the public works updated because we don't need the roads we have right now, things like that. But and so it's interesting that NEMRIC, which is a very large company that does the software for municipalities when it comes to I think that has a section that does taxes, and there's another section that does land use assessments and things like that. But they were now getting into doing, as you said, government audits, because that's another aspect of the picture that they're looking at. Unfortunately, John has been trying to get them pinned down, and it's been very difficult to do so. I mean, he can even weigh in on that. When we first made this switch and actually got a TA, it was because there was nobody. There was nobody in town hall at all. It was just the select board and who happened to walk through the door that day. And the staff eventually, you know, built their own little silos and protected them very significantly, which did not leave for very good efficiencies within the building itself. And so at that point, VLCT was able to help, and they came in and assessed, talked to committee chairs, talked to the select board, talked to staff, and then finally came up with a recommendation. And we ended up, because the town administrator's job descriptions can be anything. I mean, there's no real set stone for that in town and state statutes, but there is for town administrator. And we ended up going with, just before I became a member of the board, I was still on the DRB when this happened, but ended up with the TA because, but it was a strong TA. It essentially, and Wayne even looked it up at one point to see that it was very similar to what a town administrator does. But the reason we did it this way is because the select board is the one responsible to the public and is voted in or out, where the town manager isn't. And so we felt that that was the best way for public to be part of the process, is that the select board is the one still making the big decisions. If with a town manager, typically what happens is that because their job is then they run the town hall and make these big decisions, where the select board becomes the policy wonks, or, you know, like this is where we want to go, this is what we want to do, you know, make it so number one or whatever you want to do that. But
Was that a Star Trek reference, Catherine?
Yes, it was.
Wow. Legendary. Legendary.
We got
There is-
Barbie, we got Star Trek. Oh my goodness.
There is, you know, we have to be careful. We've sort of conflated a governance issue, governance concerns with staffing.
Right, exactly.
and-
Because I was just trying to give the history. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Wayne, I shouldn't have interrupted you.
No,
But-
because you have more history than I do. But I have first, Esther, I really appreciate the work that you put into those couple slides about what would be involved. And I've spent quite a bit of time wondering about this whole governance issue and staffing, and, you know, and how we address increased expectations. I agree to Susan's comment a couple of minutes ago. There are very different expectations, I think, than there was 10 or 15 years ago about what town government has to do. And,
Yeah.
and we've got to figure out a sensible way of growing that. Specific to the, you know, you mentioned a couple of things, the town manager, the increase in the select board. As far as the 3 to 5 person board, I think it's worth noting, I don't know why, but there are a number of people who are not enfranchised. I'm not saying they're disenfranchised, but they're not enfranchised with town government. And they see the possibility of a 5 person board as a good thing for them. I don't know that it is, but there are people who don't hang out at the town hall who think this would be worth looking into. And that's worth paying attention to, that the people that don't talk to us a whole lot think, boy, if we had a 5 person board, I could get my 2 cents worth in. I'm not completely convinced, but, you know, that's what they think. So that's worth paying serious attention to. There is some resources. There's this woman, Catherine, you must know her. It's either Dawn Francis or Dawn Andrews. I can't remember, but
Francis.
She worked for Colchester and helped Richmond when they went, I think, to a manager. Anyway, she has a presentation, and if we do some forums, for lack of a better word, over the next year or so, she's somebody we could tap who could be kind of a neutral party and help sort of explain the pluses and minuses of this thing if we do this. But I think SJ touches on a really, on an issue that's bigger than whether we should go to a 5-person board. It's more about increasing capacity. So I'm to the point where I think we should seriously put this before the voters at some point. I don't even have an idea when. I think there's enough interest across the political spectrum in town that we should, at the very least, have a couple forums about this idea.
Are you talking capacity in terms of staff or the select board or?
More the select board. I really want to rely on that study for staffing, or maybe some other structure for looking at the staffing. I think just to have a committee of people get in town to sit around and think about how staffing should improve. I don't know about the outcome of that, if it would be particularly.
No, I think we really need to follow up and see if VLCT is interested in doing something like that and really put some heat to NIMRIC, because we do need the governing audit, because I think that has been the limiting factor. I mean, Catherine did humongous amounts of work, and Todd knew stuff. So it was able to be done what we did, because there was a lot done in the 11 years he was here. A significant amount of stuff happened in the town. But at this point, because there's so much complexity to everything, and people are talking about project management, even though you can put that in a grant. But there's grant. You can't get grants if you don't apply for them, and if you don't have enough staff to follow through, you can't apply. And I think that's where we really need to look. And Wayne kind of mentioned it, perhaps in the planning and zoning office, because that's really the driver of a lot of this stuff. And if you had somebody there who could, who is good at grants, Linda is too, but, could manage them to look to see what we can do. And, so that you're out there getting more grants, because we're not getting as many grants as we used to.
One other comment about the town manager is, I think the assumption is with a 5-person board, we'd have more board members. Maybe we could get into the weeds some more and straighten a couple of things out. If you have a town manager, it's just the opposite of that. The select board's duties would be much more circumspect. Maybe that's a good thing. As Catherine said, much more to do with policy and finance, and less to do with, do we really need a culvert over on, Main Street kind of thing. So I think there would be a change of role for the select board under a town manager. And I also think, one of the things that I've been so grateful, I know Eric feels the same way, but we've been so grateful that Catherine has been able to put in the time being a chair. The chair, remember, we had rotating chairs, which were not as effective, I guess. I would just leave it at that. But if we're going to have a 5-person board, that's going to require a slightly different role for the chair. I will say, as one positive, I had something that I wanted to pass on to Eric and Catherine literally like 4 weeks ago, and I have not been able to do that because of the constraints of a 3-person board, because we can't really meet in between meetings. So I hear that frustration. So SJ, I think we've got to explore some of these possibilities, if for no other reason than people are expecting a lot more from town government than they used to.
Well, and I mean, there are so many nuances that in just those couple of minutes of listening to you talk, Wayne, about how, the difference between, first of all, the difference between staffing and the number of select board members, and how those really kind of function in different ways and will have different impacts. But the nuance between a town manager and the role of the select board, if it's a manager versus an administrator, these are the kinds of things that none of us public know, and wouldn't know how to vote on, and how to even think about without a forum.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the work you've done, and I see Sabina has her hands up.
I have a couple comments first.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Yeah, so I think I've mentioned this a few times. This is just my opinion. I agree that having a forum where people can hear out the pros and cons, especially if we talk to towns who have a town manager, or especially if we find a town who has recently switched to a town manager. I suppose that's Heinsberg, or a town that's recently switched to a 5-person board. And just see like what went well with that, what didn't go so well with it. On the town manager thing, the point I made several times is we don't have a fire department. We don't have a police department. We do have a library, but each of in our town, each of those things are its own individual entities. So I keep asking, what would a town manager manage? So I have a hard time envisioning that. Where when I think of town manager, I'm thinking the police department reports up to them, the fire department reports up to them,
Yeah.
and maybe that's not the case. I don't know, but I keep getting reminded about how fragmented we are as municipalities, and the town manager wouldn't have, in our specific case, because of that, wouldn't have that same jurisdiction over those types of things because they're all their own separate, either their municipalities or their 501 whatevers. I forget how they're all organized, but and then on the 5-person board thing, again, it's an interesting concept. None of the people that I talk to that are in town that have nothing that I don't see at these meetings, it's not something that I personally hear. I hear it from the people that do come to the meetings. I would also be interested to learn how that helps. How does that help get something done? I get along great with Wayne and Catherine, and even the thought of one of them swapping out is already like, gives me a little anxiety. Like, would it take longer for us to get to decisions on things if there were more people? And certainly, maybe that's not the case, but those are just some of the things that I do worry about and I do think about. And I just wonder, how does that help? Totally agree. It would be great if I could call up Catherine and be like, do you know what the heck they're talking about here? Like, I can't do that now, right? So I have to call John or Paula, or we're not supposed to do that. So in that sense, it would absolutely be helpful. But at the end of the day, you can't just. It doesn't mean you can just do that either, right? Because then I could be like, all right, let's say the select board was the 3 of us plus SJ and Sabina. Well, then I could be like, hey, SJ, make sure you vote this way. Okay, hey, Wayne, make sure you vote this way. Okay, Catherine, make sure, like you could still do that same thing that they're trying to avoid. And I don't know, I'm just curious how it adds to the ability to the town to get more things done. I'm not saying it won't. It's hard for me to envision how it would help get more things done.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, Sabina, you've been waiting a long time.
No problem. It's yesterday at our staff meeting, Terry brought up something that I thought was very interesting about this new trend in sort of staff sharing. And John was there, and he can probably fill you guys in a little more detail. But the bottom, the nuts and bolts of it is that communities across Vermont are sharing, almost like what we do with our engineer, so we're sharing services of professionals. And one thing that she said that really struck me was how doing this actually builds our capacity to attract more talent, younger people, because when they can work in several towns, then they can become full-time employees, and that makes a job all that more attractive to people when they can get benefits. And so it really just sounded like a great solution to some of our potential staffing issues that are not just ours, but across the state. And so it's very early in this conversation, but I just want to kind of put that out there into the stratosphere that, this is something that we could look into and might be a win-win for us and other surrounding towns.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Sorry, Catherine. We had discussed intergovernmental agreements. So, and I know, that model has already been discussed in regard to recreation coordinator between Underhill and Jericho. I think it's again, even in my short time, there's been some recognition that there could be some shared benefit and possibility. It's making the priority and then, you know, committing and following through on the agreement is the hard part.
Thank you, John. Susan?
I was just going to offer a comment on Eric's comment about jurisdiction, like what would we supervise? And it's true that fire department, police, we don't have those things. And I don't currently have an opinion about town manager versus administrator or anything like that. But I do know that there are roles that the planning commission sees that the town needs that we don't currently really fulfill. They might be bits and pieces of other people's jobs. And so, for example, like Winooski just recently established the role of someone to work on housing initiatives. And the planning commission mentioned this a bit when we provided to you an ARPA recommendation about ways to spend the ARPA money around real estate development and deals and facilitating work with housing partners. It's really more of a staff role rather than just a committee role. You talked earlier about having a recreation committee, and we've kind of rounded it out to be like recreation, well-being, children and families. We talked tonight about potentially a senior coordinator. Catherine just mentioned our public works specifications, but if we go forward with anything around wastewater, we're going to need expertise around public works, wastewater, complete streets, and low impact development in particular, financing, bonding, and long-term capital planning, and then planning and zoning. So those are areas of town capacity that need to be expanded. And so the question is, what's the best way to structure those roles and what's the best way to manage those roles? So I would just say it's not so much police and fire, it's really the work that Jericho needs to do fits under those categories.
Right. And honestly, where my comment actually came from was your ARPA recommendation about hiring the housing person. I love that idea. I think that is gonna bring capacity to the town. And, you know, honestly, I could see it paying for itself after a couple years of, hey, we're starting to get more development of the right types of the types of development we want to get. Like I can totally see getting behind that. And maybe the NEMRIC study, I guess I might not remember what that's supposed to do as well as I should, or as well as SJ seems to know what it's going to do. Maybe that's going to help us recommend something like that. I guess I don't see how having a town manager or a 5-person board would help with that person. Like I think we should be talking about that more, actually. We should just, I don't know, do we have to go to a town meeting to hire one of those? Is that just something that we can pull the trigger on and talk about a little bit? Like, I don't know. So I totally agree with expanding capacity. And I was only really just voicing my opinion on the 5-person board and the town manager. I'm not necessarily opposed to them, but I just struggle to be like, okay, but then what does that do? You know, does that get that person hired or another person hired or whatever? So.
Right. Yeah. I guess it's just the ability to supervise the work of those kinds of roles. And if they're people or if they're parts of people, you know, it's an organizational development opportunity and what's the best structure for that.
Right. Sounds good. Thank you all for the amount of work you put into all these different things. It's, you know, we are working on capacity. It's, you know, it just obviously takes a little bit of time, but that really is on the radar. There's no question about that. All right. I take it, John, we don't have anything on the stormwater, which was next on the agenda?
Yeah, that is correct. We weren't able to get the proposal from, Andres at Watershed Consulting in time, so that'll be, tabled until, next meeting.
Okay. So next, we review and consider our renewal of the operator of the website, platform, which is Granicus.
I make a
So-
motion, we extend the contract with Granicus for management of our website and public engagement.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. That was very good. All right, next, this Bradley is not here, I take it.
Yeah, so Bradley wasn't able to be here tonight. Again, his approval of his appointment will have to be come up at the next meeting. And Justin was on, but I see he left, so he must have the hourglass must have run out for Justin, and we'll have to invite him back. Yeah, in terms of process, I don't know if it's appropriate to make an appointment without doing a proper interview. Up to you to decide how you want to proceed.
It wouldn't be fair because we've made everybody else come in for an interview. So I think, for at least for them to come in and, the public sees them at a meeting and, here's who they are, what their background is and why they're interested in the position is always good.
Excellent.
In my opinion.
I think with the DRB position, it's absolutely essential. That's a quasi judicial appointment. So we definitely owe that person an interview prior to appointment. So they should be first on the agenda or second or something the next time because he hung in there as long as he could.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll try to do that. It's kind of hard to stack an agenda in a way that's going to assure everybody is heard in an efficient amount of time. We will do that.
Imagine if each topic had two more select board members that had to comment on it too.
That's right.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Well, this is your one of the favorites there. It's the liquor licenses for weddings at the Mansfield Barn. We need to review and consider those liquor licenses.
All right. Does anyone want to chat or you want me to just start to roll with the okay.
Just roll it out.
Okay, so there's two for Griffin Riders. So I'll make a motion to approve the liquor license for Griffin Riders LLC for September 16th and September 30th. I'm assuming these are both at the Mount Mansfield Barn.
Yes. Do we have a second?
Oh,
Wayne?
second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 I'll make a motion for Waterfront Yogurt and Sandwich Company to approve their liquor licenses on September 9th, September 22nd, and September 23rd, all of 2023 at the Mansfield Barn.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now it's time for select board updates. Do you want to go first, John, or?
Sure. Boy, they are deep since we first meeting we've had in a month or so. I want to start off by recognizing the recent resignation of our road foreman, Adam McGee. I know we've had a lot of discussion about the implication and all the great work Adam has done during his time with the town. I personally have learned a lot as I've onboarded into my position about the critical role that the road crew plays as the outward face of safe travel, safe roads, and everything in between in the community. So yeah, we will, Paul and I have been engaged in conversation with the road crew about an interim plan for function moving forward. And we will, we have another, we've had a preliminary meeting. We'll have another meeting with the crew next week, and we will report back with that plan and what the implication is in regard to hiring a new road foreman and what that schedule will look like following. Yeah, Adam took a position as an operations manager for the town of Colchester. It was an opportunity to do more project management and provide managerial oversight, given the extensive experience he's had within the highway department realm and expanding that into broader municipal service, recreation. Yeah, and he's won't have to be driving a plow truck holidays, weekends, evenings. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and extend my gratitude.
So we as the select board thank him for his service here, a couple of years service here, and wish him the best for appreciate the job he did for us while he was here.
Absolutely, because you know, he had the most accolades from the public in terms of how he kept up the quality of the roads. I mean, he really put his heart and soul into the roads of Jericho, and people did appreciate that. You know, so I mean, it's hard to lose him, because when you think about how he brought along the department in terms of the quality of the equipment and upgraded the both large and small. So, I mean, it is a loss, and we wish him well in his new job and hope he does well there. Okie dokie.
So I just wanted for people who've been following the work on the old Red Mill, our geotechnical consultant Brian Dorwart was here a couple weeks ago and is going to be submitting another opinion piece and path forward document outlining a path forward from the town's perspective. It was important that he was able to come back and look at the foundation, the interface between the foundation and the bedrock, particularly in the wake of the two significant flooding events we endured in early July. I will once I'm able to have Brian and the engineers from DDK and if possible ECI meet to come to a consensual agreement in terms of next steps. I will report those back. We did have we're getting close to the 60% mark of the wastewater feasibility study that Linda and I have been working on in conjunction with project management from CCRPC and Du Bois and King. We had a meeting with the leadership at the Mountain Warfare School to discuss potential for collaborative work in developing and sharing wastewater treatment facility that would benefit both them and us in the long term. That was productive. We have also had discussion with the wastewater board in the town of Richmond, as one of the alternatives proposed would see wastewater travel at least from the village center area to Richmond via pipe along the Browns Trace corridor. They were happy to know that we are interested in working collaboratively. I would say in terms of alternative preference, they're going to have some capacity challenges given the folks in their community who currently aren't served but are interested. Let me see what else. Wanted to quickly report out. We had Linda and I again related to our need for wastewater infrastructure and the town plan's emphasis on affordable housing. We had a visit from Senator Welch's local aide, Michelle Monroe, who's based out of St. Albans. She came to visit our town, was it last week on Wednesday? And Linda and I were able to kind of give her a tour, let her know what projects we have currently underway. We toured each of the village centers. We spent a brief amount of time at the McMullen property. We heard an understanding of what some of our affordable housing projects are, and also brought her up to the center so she could see another in addition to the mill, one of the more iconic areas of our town. She was able to visit our new librarian at the town library, which is cool. Obviously, the town library is also going to be in need of structural support, ADA improvements, heating improvements, and that sort of thing. So the idea was to really just kind of help put her finger on the pulse of all the future, all the immediate future holds for the town, and to ask for her help in connecting us to support and funding for those projects. Actually, I noticed that the conservation easement with the Vermont Land Trust and the Hunt Estate, I believe, closed yesterday. I know while there's a lot of mixed emotion on the part of the Hunt family, I know there's also a lot of excitement and gratitude in knowing that that farm is going to be returned to its agricultural history. The land along the Lee River corridor on the Lee River side is now forever conserved and will remain open space, which I think is again another extraordinary chapter in our town's path toward land conservation. But Wayne and I had a we had a meeting. Wayne, Paula, and I don't want to exclude Paula, part and soul of everything that goes on around here. Wayne and Paula and I met with Matt Young, who's of Ascent Consulting. Matt is working with us to come up with a site plan and a design for a new town garage. Our conversation today revolved around what we need in terms of capacity, what the best potential at this point looks to be in terms of site location in the vicinity of the current garage and the gravel pit, and even some kind of brass tacks conversation about things we need to consider in getting to a final iteration of a proposal that we can potentially have townwide meetings and provide more insight around. And it probably goes, Wayne, I might have mentioned this when we were talking about the governmental function audit that NEMRIC has proposed. Well, they haven't proposed, they apparently proposed it for a town other than ours, but Matt also indicated that his consulting may work beyond just that which is focused on town garage and that aspect of municipal function. He's done some operational assessments for other towns, and he may be another possible contractor who could help us with that assessment. Stay tuned there. I did want to let the rest of the select board know, I was approached by the fire department about doing a training at the 2 Railroad Circle property looking for next week. Andy Forsberg asked if it would be possible to have some of the newer volunteers come out and do hose training. So what that involves is there'd be no entrance or access to the house. They would literally roll up as if they were coming onto the scene of a fire, go through the rudiments of attaching hoses to hydrants, and thinking about strategically how they would hose down and contain fire. At this point, I've gotten nothing but positive response to adjacent neighbors. And unless I hear otherwise, I'm hoping I can give them a green light by tomorrow afternoon. They're hoping to be there next Tuesday if possible. Wayne, do you have any, I can't remember, we didn't even talk about that. We saw each other today. Do you want to weigh in on that at all, or?
No, I kind of carefully haven't weighed in on it. I'm not opposed to it. The hydrant's right there. It seems like it'd be a smart idea, I suppose.
Okay. Well, we can see, and again, not to put you on the spot, I think what I told Andy is, again, if other neighbors are in support, we can at least see how it goes. They, want to be cognizant of time, understanding it's between 7 and 9. There will obviously be a little bit of noise and commotion around, but no, I've been assured no sirens.
I would think we would want to be to limit where the fire department was parking to the McMullen property, the Howe property, and the actual right-of-way of Railroad Circle, if you know what I'm alluding to.
I do, and that is 100% correct, and that is their intention, and that's the discussion Andy and I had.
Okay.
I will reconvey that. I think. Oh, 2 more quick things. The audit, the annual audit is scheduled for October 10th, 11th, and 12th. And in regard to both the audit, the meeting required for the town plan, and upcoming budget building and engagement with you all, Paula and Linda and I are meeting tomorrow morning to try to tighten a roadmap for what that schedule, a proposed schedule for you all will look like. Our intention again is not to overwhelm you, particularly in a year where we have both the town plan and attention to the budget in parallel to one another. So we'll communicate out a roadmap and a calendar as soon as we have that completed. Tomorrow, I think I forwarded an email to both of you. We have the Harvest Crossing development, affordable housing development that the town of Underhill is undertaking with Habitat for Humanity, is having a kickoff tomorrow morning at 11 on site. The publicity that was shared with us indicated that Senator Sanders and/or a representative would be there, in addition to Habitat for Humanity leadership on the project. And I'm assuming Brad Holden and the Affordable Housing Committee representatives in Underhill as well.
That's a town hall?
No, that's it's happening on site at the location behind the church where the
Oh, that's right. Yep. Okay. You're right.
I think they said actually, obviously Bill, he's going, but he he thought it was behind the fire department building.
Fire department building.
Yeah, the fire
Oh,
department.
yeah, you're right. In that, so whatever that big field is behind the.
Right, exactly.
the church, and yeah, I know it's there, I'm not sure exactly behind what building, but.
Yeah, it's behind the,
I'm
you know,
good.
right.
I'll be looking for Bernie. Do you guys have any questions or, yeah, report out requests? Need for follow-up? I did suggest in communication earlier in the week, we will need a short executive session to discuss HR concerns in regard to Adam's resignation and way forward there, and then a couple of quick updates on legal matters.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I haven't done a whole lot, obviously, but I did attend a webinar, and I knew, you know, it was commercially sponsored by Unisolutions and Questar, but it was called Boost Community Impact and Capital Improvement Plans, because I was curious to see their process and what, you know, they're talking about. And they did have some good points. I mean, I took quite a few notes and they sent me the slide deck. But, you know, in the end, it's a data system, far more complicated than we need. But it really had the ideas that what it made me think that it was not a bad idea that we need to consider updating our community, our capital improvement plan, because it's been quite a while since we've actually had, you know, looked at the plan. We've just updated, you know, the capital budget every year in terms of the which truck or this, or, you know, this bridge or this paving or whatever. But, you know, what they did is, you know, they have their plan, and then you have the timelines, which is usually 5 to 6 years. And then it's followed by the capital spending and project updated on an annual basis. But it made sense to start thinking about this because, you know, we're looking at a new garage. We're looking at least 170,000 for Bridge 15. And the Planning Commission is, with Riverside, you know, we're looking at potential wastewater facility. And so, you know, it's worthwhile, you know, rethinking that. I'm not suggesting, you know, buying their product, or their people, but at least start thinking about these things ourselves, because we need to put money aside each year for you know, it wouldn't hurt to put the money, a certain amount of money on the side for the roads, because we do have these different changes and impacts. Or, you know, looking at the garage, you know, what we need to do there, because that really will be a vote for that, because it has to be bonded.
Right.
Because,
step by step, I hear you, Catherine. We're incrementally moving toward some more capital planning, and yeah, this is all to the good, and it goes back to SJ and Susan, and, you know, conversations we've all been having for the last 4 years. So
right.
This is good.
And then another one that I watched the MVP and the National Fitness Campaign have been sending me emails for several of them now, and I ignored them. But finally, I went and watched the video, 3-minute video, and it was intriguing. So I talked to John about it, and he thought, hey, Linda ought to be part of it. And so we had the 30-minute presentation by the fellow who is from the National Fitness Campaign. And their goal is to provide, you know, to really make healthy communities. And we're talking healthy, you know, physically active, different process. And what they have, an MVP in this area is a sponsor for $50,000 grants. And they'd like to see 5 communities in Vermont. They don't have any right now, and they'd like to see 5 over the next few years. And so they thought Jericho might be a good fit. And if we're interested, then they come in and do a lot of the planning and site work and things like that. But what it is, it's an outdoor recreation fitness pad. And it's about 38 feet square. And it's, the reason I did this is because, other recreation has been talked about a lot with ARPA spending. You know, they want to see this, and it's outdoors, and John asked some good questions about what do you do in the winter, and he says, but they put them in Minnesota, and people use them around. That started in Rochester, was the very first one in this area. This is from the National Fitness, and they actually did one in North Hudson of New York, which is like 234 people. It's pretty amazing. But what it is I wanted to see, it's a pad that's, you know, protect, you know, you have a cement slab, and then this really, really thick protective cushioning, and then these blocks and stuff, and you have your phone app, and there are all kinds of stations you go to do different things physically, you know, like you're going to a gym, only it's outside and it's free. And it was, I told them, I said, it's a nice video, but given that the people they used, he's talking about people from high school ages to seniors can do this. And I said, it didn't look like it from the video because everybody's very, very strong and buff. But he said what they do, they also train what they call their ambassadors in the town, who provide. Oh, he's going to show the what it looks like.
I can give them an idea.
There it is, yeah, and you look at it on your phone, and it has different ways of utilizing it. And they said it's even ADA accessible, which just blows your mind. And then this backdrop can be used for public art, the behind of it, which is pretty amazing. And like, as
He
you
was
can see,
selling this product?
yes, it's a product. He's not selling it per se. They do all the work to get it together. I mean, you just have to pay for it, obviously. But it's called the Fitness Court Public Art, and all kinds of Blue Cross, Blue Shield, MVP, all kinds of insurance companies and healthcare companies across the country are behind this, trying to make communities healthier and doing these things. And so you would have, lessons by your local person who would, go through a senior training on it, or somebody that the bunch of people who are wheelchair bound could utilize these things. It's a chunk of change, but other towns have used ARPA funding for it, and I looked at it, and we could have another presentation by him if you like, where John can send out the 3-minute video to see what it is. But it's it would be about $150,000 to do this, assuming and you would get with everything put together, and that would include the $50,000 grant to start with. But it looked intriguing because it's a way to do gym stuff without having a gym, because at this point the town is, given that we need the garage, we're still paying in the town hall. We have other wastewater, which is a much higher priority than building a recreational facility that's an indoor structure, because like the smallest one we've looked at that has been voted on in Chittenden County was in Charlotte, and that was $3 million, and that was the small one, and that was defeated in Charlotte. The more expensive one, using their 1 cent tax, is Colchester, and there's a 16 million. So we're not ready to do an indoor facility, but I thought, maybe the select board looks at this and, talks to the fellow, or, you really need to look at the video, but I don't know what John felt about it. I thought, it had some potential.
Yeah. I think it would, it would at least be worth providing you, Eric and Wayne, for more information. It would require designating a location and having a contractual partnership with, one of the parks or one of the schools that would be, willing to locate it. So
Because
I'll,
they help with the site planning and all that and look for strategic partners within your community, which is nice because they're doing the grunt work rather than you having to do it.
right. Yes, I'll forward that stuff with Wayne and Eric.
Yeah. And maybe we can set up another meeting then with Michael or David, whatever. I'm blanking on his name right now. Too much. With it.
It's late.
Yeah, he said next week, but I think we could put a different time because I don't know. He was talking
Yeah.
about 9 o'clock next Tuesday, but I don't know if people are available to talk to him then. I know Eric can't because he's got a new job.
I know.
I could do it. I'm not inclined to spend $100,000 of ARPA funds on something just off the top of my head, but I'd be willing to listen to him for a little bit longer if it's on Tuesday.
Yeah, it seemed like a way to bring a different form of recreation to the town when people are talking about ways of having different recreation and talking about a recreational facility and things like that. So it just looked interesting because their whole goal is to build healthy communities. They were set up to do that.
I guess, and where without belaboring this, because we still have other stuff to do.
Right.
Where it would be located would be really important. If you recall all the very expensive exercise equipment that was put opposite St. Mike's on that long strip of grass, and there it sat for 5 years, and then eventually they took it down, if you know where I mean, right along 15. But I suppose if there was, if it was near the middle school or the high school where people might be slightly more inclined to actually get out and use it, but
Riverside Park.
Yeah, Riverside Park. Yeah.
Riverside can't do it because they have their conservation easement. I talked to Livy about it already. Their conservation does not allow something that structural to be built. But the school is a good idea because that's where that new 9-hole, that disc golf course with ARPA funding is going to be. And you got parking, either that or the high school, because people use the track and everything else there. And so there might be space for that.
The high school is more central to the rest of the town too. So yeah, that's true. And so they'll help you with that whole process. But it means in the end, you're going to spend about 150,000, something in that lane. I forget all the different categories that you could have, depending on whether because you could have an add-on of a pad where you could do yoga, things like that.
And you could have a nationally renowned artist do their work instead of sending Eric up there with some magic markers.
That's right. Our own Basque. All righty. Those are the two things I've participated in while I've been recovering.
Thank you.
So I guess
one quick update I have is I luckily John mentioning 2 Railroad Circle reminded me because I apparently forgot to put on my calendar. I am meeting with Karina tomorrow at 2 Railroad Circle. As part of one of the discussions that came up in the JCDC was that the next steps suggested by Dave from Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity was to start looking at some of the wetland designation. And I did email Chris Flynn about that. And so I kind of agreed with Chris that I'd set up some time with him at some point, which I have not done yet. But in parallel to that, I forget exactly how it went down. Somebody reached out to maybe Susan might have reached out to Sabina, who suggested Karina, and anyway, Karina offered to go and take a look at it because Karina has some, I mean, it's part of her expertise. So I said, sure, I'd meet her there tomorrow. I don't know exactly what that's going to entail. I'm not looking for anything official, like, here, this is wetland, this is not. But I guess my hope is to learn a little bit more about what's there and what's not. I've heard a lot of hearsay about how wet it is. Well, yeah, everything's been wet all year. I don't know.
Right.
Hey, Eric, out of curiosity, what time are you meeting? Because you're gonna be coincidentally, like within a stone's throw of the side of Lee River Road that we've talked about wanting to explore the sidewalk realignment. And the wetland is the concern, and she would have a good understanding of what the chances would be to for that to be green lighted after an upcoming depot review. And I neglected to. I just met with Karina and yesterday about the dam removal grant in Jericho Town Forest. Sorry, I didn't put that in my check-in. But she didn't mention anything about meeting with you, and if you're going to be in that neighborhood, I'd be interested in swinging by and seeing if she could get eyes on that as well.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. Unfortunately, I forgot about it, so well, anyway.
You're double booked.
Yeah.
I'm not double booked, but I just went and got all the materials for a project that I wanted to start. Like, I generally work till about noon or 1 on Fridays, so I'll try to figure out how to fit it in, but it's
Well,
okay.
If you have a time and you can't meet, I think I could capably maybe cover both if it would
Okay.
help. My
Okay.
only commitments are in the morning. Afternoon is wide open.
Okay. Yeah, I plan on meeting you there at 2 p.m. So
Oh, cool.
So I'll just say super briefly, over the last month, seems like a month and a half since we've been in the same room together, other than a lot of the traveling that I've done, the heating, I've kept on that. It sounds like that's well under control for the highway department. I'm not going to go into all the details. The highway building meeting today, I participated in, and there's really no need to give you any more updates than you got already. I was in touch with somebody from the commercial district. At some point, I wanted to pass something on to you in regard to that. And then I got to watch one of the select board members in action when he performed his judicial role at the pet parade. It was a very solemn event.
Oh, that's great.
Because that was good. So I've had my hand in things a little bit, but
Yeah.
that's all I have for tonight.
Now, are these actually designated wetlands, or just state designated, federally designated, or just
Anecdotally designated is about
Yeah.
as formal as it gets, I think, John. Is that correct?
Yeah, anecdotally, what I would say, class 3 as I understand them.
Yeah, if they're class 3, I mean, that's sort of the minimal, worrisome kind of stuff when it comes to, especially now that, especially if it was federally designated. I mean, it's much more constrained in terms of what you have to worry about in terms of wetlands based on the latest Supreme Court.
Yeah, so so just reading, just to clarify and make sure I'm being clear, I just found the email that I read to the JCDC, and I'll just repeat the part here. And I don't particularly remember this, but apparently when Dave Malouin came, Jason Gabrino, keep saying that wrong, Gabrino, something like that, mentioned in his report a possible wetlands area. I think the wetlands delineation, as Jason mentioned, will need to be done. So, I mean, it's not marked as wetland as far as I know, but I'll just go with an expert and have an expert tell me instead of me just guessing at it. But so that's kind of what we're doing, is answering that particular piece, and just trying to understand what the next steps are, which Chris does know how to go about doing that. So I'm meeting with
Yeah.
Karina, then I'll chat with Chris about it at some point too.
There's gotta be, Eric, I know there's state maps that are already been pre-designated. Wayne and I were looking at maps that Matt accessed to look at the area in and around the garage for those kinds of concerns for developing the town garage. So I think they're relatively, they're public, they're easily accessible if you know where to find them, and yeah, ground truthing them with Karina will be helpful.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Any other updates? If
None-
not,
really.
let's go to the minutes of August 3rd. And I do apologize to Donna that I didn't send her the information, because she would like me to send it much more updated rather than at the following meeting when we approve the minutes. But on line 280, we have Eric motioned, Wayne second to exit executive session. Motion passed 3-0. No action was taken, and that was at 10 p.m. And then Wayne motioned and Eric second to adjourn at 10:01, and the motion passed 3-0. So I apologize to Donna for not doing it earlier. I was a little distracted. But that's the only thing that I had on it.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 3rd.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, we would typically sign the warrants, but we can come in and sign at any time.
Yep.
Maybe by October I will. Possible executive session for HR and legal.
I will
So-
make a motion to go into executive session because premature disclosure of the information provided would be detrimental to the parties involved for reasons of personnel and legal.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank
night,
you,
everybody.
MMC TV crew, Donna, thanks for your time.
Thank you.